I'm making this video because I had questions lately about picky eaters with kids. It can be really frustrating and even scary for parents sometimes if kids aren't eating properly or they won't try things. And certainly, um, there are real conditions where people aren't eating enough or they're eating way too much. So food can sometimes be tricky. Um, I don't want to share some of the stuff that I've learned through hypnosis and neuroscience and my understanding to be able to share stuff, ways we may be able to make positive impacts and get out of power struggle stuff with kids or anybody maybe. So I just made a couple of notes to make sure I touch these points. I remember hearing about taste buds and scientific information about the way that we experience the food that we taste. So kids have a major advantage. So I'd say if you got a child who's been a picky eater, you might be able to frame in a positive way. You're kind of lucky. You kids are lucky because your taste buds are different. You kids only have to taste things like way less times to develop a taste for something. The story was about a guy who wanted to stop taking, cream and sugar in his coffee for health reasons or something. And it took like 50 times of tasting it and not really liking it to all of a sudden, wow, now the 50th time, I prefer my coffee this way now. So your taste buds and the way we interpret them neurologically, it's changeable. And kids have a major advantage on this. So even if you try something once, you go, I'm not sure if I really like corn on the cob. If you try it again, you might like it. And then if you don't, then another time, maybe it smells good and you think, I'm going to try that again. You may well like it. So some of your favorite foods you may not have tasted yet. That's a positive way to point someone towards being a little more adventurous. So that's the taste buds point that I wanted to touch on. There's patterns of neurons. That is, people often say, neurons that fire together, wire together, so that we build habits essentially where we like things, or if we don't like things, you might have a habit of only eating noodles. And that maybe is just a habit. It's just that it's easier to make something that you're used to, but things are changeable. If you try something new, you can develop a new habit for that too, and that's valuable. It's not that these things are fixed. That's the main point of the neuroscience of this. It's not a fixed state where you just are never going to like something. You may well like something that's new. There's also a potential negative association with something. So if, if you had something in your mouth that had a certain texture to it that turned out to be gross or even dangerous for you, there may well be something that happens in your brain, in your body, that associates that texture or that flavor or something with something dangerous, and you have an aversion to it. All you have to do is think of some kind of alcohol you got sick on once. You just the smell of it and make you, oh God, get it away from me, right? So we can have, it's possible that there was some possible negative association. You could have somebody who maybe has heard somebody else say, oh, and then I got that fuzzy feeling on my tongue and I knew I was going to have to go to the emergency room or something like that. This kind of thing could be picked up by a child or somebody else, and they could be really hyper aware and think they may be experiencing a food allergy, which is of course something serious. But if they're not, and it's just a fear, something associated with a previous experience, that's always a possibility too. But if it's not a food allergy or a sensitivity, then yeah, you should be able to experiment and eat new things and try them out. It's pretty normal to have picky eater stuff. Lots of kids go through that. If you think of yourself when you were younger, probably a lot of people end up eating noodles or chicken nuggets or only beige things. That can be fairly common. The other thing I would mention is that sometimes we can get into a habit of a power struggle kind of habit where you're trying to force somebody to eat that pork chop because you cooked it or something like that, or there ends up being somehow attached to a situation that sort of keeps it stuck in this dynamic where you keep providing a number of different foods for somebody and they won't eat it, and you try something else and they know that they feel bad or they wish they could do it differently, and now you've got this power struggle or this negative kind of thing that it's being exquisitely maintained by the dynamic that you have. And so with looking at this through hypnosis or the skills that hypnosis teaches, we would look to watch the language that we're using to try to point to potential positive outcomes rather than negative framing of things. And this may seem pedantic or maybe a lost point on some, but there is a difference between which of those foods are you not going to eat, which ones don't you like, what don't you like about that, always framing and searching for a negative thing rather than looking at what are the, which of these foods do you think you would try first, or which one smells the best, or are there any foods that you'd like to taste that you haven't. The unconscious part of our mind, that is the part of us that operates without us being aware of it, it will dutifully answer whichever questions we sort of ask it. So if we are asking a question of, why am I so stupid, you'll get awful answers about all the bad things that you've done. But if you ask yourself questions like, how can I get smarter, your unconscious mind will search for those as well. And so if we apply that to food, we can look at the positive things that we may want to move towards. So, do you like this or do you like that, or what do you like about this? Do you like the crunchiness or the softness, the specific textures or the smells, the color? Eating a plate full of color is often recommended. As far as veggies, you're getting different vitamins and things from that. So those are some of the things that we would kind of look at, and it can be adventurous to try new foods, and it shouldn't be a big deal, hopefully, if you try something and you don't really like it today. I mean, even I like to have eggs on toast quite often, but there's some days where I don't want to eat that at all. So moving into a positive, hopeful, less charged kind of way of looking at things may well be helpful. Of course, each individual circumstance is going to be a bit different. I just wanted to make a quick video to answer some of these questions that come up around food. And certainly there are bound to be some foods that you've never tasted yet that could be, your favorite new foods. And there could be things that you normally like that you just don't want to eat today. You just want to make sure that you're getting nutrition and, that you're enough to be healthy. So hopefully this is something helpful. I realize there's a point that I missed that I wanted to touch on when it comes to eating. This crosses over to a lot of other things too, but this is about a part of your brain called the reticular activating system, and it filters out information that you don't need, that's not helpful, so you don't get overwhelmed. So, for example, you aren't necessarily aware of it now, but you could be aware of the feeling of your feet on the floor, or yourself sitting in a chair, or those sounds that are on the periphery outside, or where your tongue is in your mouth. It's not normally important information, so your brain's filtering it out and just drawing your attention to the things that are important to you. So as far as eating goes, if you've got someone fussy about food with a texture or something, and you think, well, this cheese feels weird in my mouth, and then you're focusing on that because it's come to your attention, you don't necessarily need that information, provided you're safe and everything's cool, right? Your brain will bring stuff up to your attention if it thinks maybe it'll be helpful to you. Maybe there's a reason bringing it up, or you just get focused on what the texture of food, and you're not really noticing the taste or how different it is. And you know yourself, some days you might be eating and you're also engaged in a conversation, as often we are, where you're thinking about something else, or you're going to reply to something somebody else said, and you might even go, oh, I don't know if I even really tasted that food, let alone noticing all the specific texture of it. So if you're finding that you've got information that you don't want, information that's not helpful in your brain, it's the best way that I understand to get it out of there is to put something else in its place. So if you got a child who's worried about the texture of food, it's possible to have the attention to something else, like when you're eating, can you notice all the other things that are on the table, or how the taste and the texture is different than something else, and focusing on the other senses, maybe even, right? Because we have our auditory sense of what things sound like. So, chips and toast are crunchy and soup is slurpy, I guess. I don't know. There's all these different sounds related to foods, and that could be something that's appetizing. And then there's, of course, what it looks like with our visual sense. Some foods are brightly colored or not so much. They may shine or may be dull. All the potential visual changes, and what things sound like and what they look like, that information can distract from or point the energy of the mind towards something different. Then there's the temperature. It may be that the physical sensation, the kinesthetic sense of how it feels, there's too much attention being paid to it. So that's why I suggest the other senses, or the gustatory, your sense of smell, rather, where you can notice some things smell good. Do they taste like they smell? Just like the same way that if someone tells you to not think of a pink elephant, you'll sort of think of a pink elephant, and then you've got to sort of put an X out of it or get it out of your mind after you've thought of it. So goes with the texture of a food. Focusing more on it, or bringing it up, is going to focus you on it. And if you can set your mind to other things, either conversations that people are having at the table where you're not really noticing, or if you are noticing the food, noticing the color, or the sound, these kinds of things. So maybe that's helpful as an add-on. Okay.